Hello, explorers and eccentrics. My name is TB Skyn, and if you're hearing any wind noise in my microphone, or you're hearing what sounds like the noise of cars driving by, that's because I've got my windows open and I've got a fan pointed directly at me, just blasting me with as much air as this little electrical motor can provide, because it is unconscionably, just immorally, awfully, terribly, miserably hot. Like, there is a moral crime being committed by the sun against me personally right now, and I am dying. I am dying. I am perishing as we speak. The funeral is on Thursday, and when I am dead, I am planning to go to hell because I think the temperatures down there will be more reasonable. However, before I die, before I pass away from this mortal coil, there's a map on Runeterra now. A map of all the nations and all the regions and all the stuff that's been going on in League of Legends for a very long time. Now, you might say to yourself, hang on, isn't a map like the first thing you should have when you're designing a big, giant, world for a whole bunch of characters to inhabit? Well, yeah, a map is a pretty good thing to have, and League of Legends did indeed used to have one, but then they changed the lore, and they changed everything about the world, and so the map kind of started to not make sense anymore, and they had to make a new one. And that has taken them, let's be honest, really quite a good long while, but finally, we are here. We have a map. And I'm excited. Now, I don't really have any objective in mind with this video particularly. I don't have any sort of grand idea behind what we're going to be doing here. We're just going to be exploring the map, and we're going to be talking about maps, and we're going to be talking about, why it matters that you have a kind of physical geography for your world, what that can do for your storytelling. And we're going to be looking at some of the fantastic concept art that's hidden inside of this map, because that's really the first thing about the map that we've got here, is that mostly it's a thing where you can click on a whole bunch of things, and then you get a bunch of a little bit of storytelling lore stuff going on out here on the right, but mostly you just get an actual metric ton of concept art, of just random bits of stuff from places and people in the outfits that they wear when they are from some place like this. And the thing is, on the old Universe website, or old, I say old, it's fairly new, but on the normal Universe website, all of this stuff is accessible as far as I know. Like, you can find it, you can see it, but it's just kind of there. It's just kind of put behind, like, if you click on Targon, then you can see some concept art that's related to Targon and stuff, but it doesn't really have a physical location in the world. Let me give you an example. For example, here, Merromark Market is what this place is called. It's a trading post in Shurima, right? This is a nice piece of concept art, very cool. Like, they have a market inside the bones of some ancient, absolutely massive creature of some kind. That's very cool. But where is this? Like, if you just go to a website and you click on Shurima and you see that, that's very cool, but you don't have any sense of where that is in the world. You know it's inside Shurima, but because you don't have a map, you don't know where Shurima is either. You don't really have a sense of where is that in the world, where is that relative to everything. But now that we have a map, we can see, oh, right, Shurima is this giant dead desert that is slowly being revived because Azir has brought the sun disk back, and the sun disk is just spilling water all over the place, which is causing these rivers to reform, and the rivers are causing plant life to very slowly start to reestablish itself in Shurima. Little bits of green, little tendrils of green, representing the power of Azir flowing all over the countryside. And this market, Merromark Market, is at the mouth or at the end of one of those rivers, right? So what you get there is, oh, right, so in ancient times, before the fall of the Empire, this place was established at the mouth of a river, which is a great place to have a trading post. And then it managed to survive in the thousands of years when Shurima was fallen, and now that Shurima has revived, you can see this tendril of life is slowly reaching out and slowly reviving the area of Shurima. Just, in general, the concept art that we find here is just really freaking good and cool. And, like, look at this character design. This is really cool. This is a raider of some kind. A marauder that likes to prey on the trading caravans and stuff. Look at this character design. That's really freaking cool. And it's really just kind of full of these little hidden gems that, like, because you can see, once you zoom out, all you really have is the regions themselves. And then once you zoom in a little bit, oh, you get a few more details here and there. But then once you zoom in a little bit more, oh, even more stuff starts to crop up. And it's a wonderful way to organize all this concept art. Like, because on the old Universe website, it was all just kind of there in a pile. And it was like, and the site was just kind of saying to you, here's all the concept art, go look at it. It's there. It's just there. And that was fine, but it was also kind of just overwhelming and messy and didn't really give me any sense of what the concept art meant. But now that concept art is organized, you can see this trading post, this city of Shurima, is a very different place to a place like down here in this trading market in the middle of the desert, right? And now that makes a kind of sense to me. Okay, so that's why Nashrame has a lot more trees and stuff. It's located right next to the coast. Oh, that makes sense. In a way that it didn't if the concept art for this trading post was just kind of bundled up alongside this scavenger stuff from the middle of the desert and this trading post in the middle of the desert and the sun disk itself in the middle of the desert. For me, it always gave me this kind of sense that everything was just kind of shoved together in a pile and everything was just kind of close to each other because there was no sense of the physical distances involved. Like, I had no idea how big Shurima was. I had no sense of it. Like, I knew it was a powerful empire and stuff, but Shurima is this big. Like, it's bigger than Noxus, really, by square footage, probably. It's much bigger than Demacia. It's bigger than the Freljord. It's perhaps the biggest empire on the entire planet, or it used to be, before it fell, but I didn't really have a sense of that. Like, my sense of the politics of the League of Legends world was always that Noxus and Demacia were the two superpowers, and everything else kind of orbited them. But now that we have physical map, you can kind of see that, you know, in just sheer square miles, Freljord probably has about the same square mile area as Noxus, which means that if Ashe ever manages to unite the tribes of the Freljord, or if any of the leaders in the Freljord ever manage to unite the place, all of a sudden we have a major political power player on the international stage, which is what Ashe wants, which is also presumably what Sejuani would do. She would form a conquering army and strike out and attack Noxus and Demacia, whereas Ashe would seek peaceful diplomatic relations and perhaps form an alliance with Demacia against the aggression of Noxus, right? But where before the Freljord felt a lot like it was just kind of Scandinavia, vaguely Scandinavia, which is not... I love Scandinavia, like living here, but we're not like a major world power. We're not... people are generally not very scared of us. But looking at this, all of a sudden the Freljord is more like Russia. And all of a sudden there's a reason to be worried if all of a sudden it started to completely unite itself and become a militaristic nation with expansionist ideas. And that's the kind of thing that a map can do for your storytelling. The map can contextualize why nations are the way that they are. For instance, look at the borders of the Freljord, Demacia, and Noxus, right? Noxus is our expansionist empire, always trying to expand their borders, always trying to find more resources, conquer more land, and you can really tell. Like, it's almost like the shape of the country is almost like a mouth that's attempting to devour the rest of the continent, right? It's almost like this braying dog that's kind of trying to chew up Demacia and the Freljord. And you can just kind of see that Noxus is just kind of expanding wherever. Like, go to Ionia, just grab some grab some territory over there. Shurima, yes, grab some territory there. Grab some of the coastline, grab some of the Freljord, grab all of the things. And that personality, that sense of the expansionist empire really comes across in the map. It shows you, in physical terms, what... thank you, CC Cleaner, for popping up there. It shows you in physical terms what the politics of the nation are like, what the personality, the culture of the nation is like. And contrast that with something like the Freljord. Like, unlike Noxus, which is just kind of... It has borders everywhere. Wherever, it's just expanding everywhere and it's trying to expand its borders as much as possible. The Freljord, look at where that is bounded. The Freljord, the border for the Freljord runs along this river. Shut the fuck up, CC Cleaner. Along this mountainside, along these mountain ridges right here, and then it's otherwise just kind of bounded by the coastline. The Freljord is a nation defined by its physical borders, by whatever mountain range happens to be in the way, whatever river happens to form a nice border, that is where the border of the Freljord lies. And that again tells you something about the place, that it is not really a unified political whole. They don't negotiate treaties about their borders. They don't really go out and have some kind of international relations about where their nation is, where their borders are. They just, yeah, here in the mountains, like that's our stuff. Whatever's behind those mountains, that's us. Whatever's not, that's other people. So the Freljord is a nation defined by its environment. It's defined by the land of the Freljord, whereas Noxus is trying very much to not be defined by its land. And you get kind of the same thing with Demacia. Unlike Noxus, which just is expanding everywhere it can possibly get, look at Demacia. It's almost kind of curled up into a ball. Right? It's kind of this self-contained, completely isolated, closed-off little nation, which makes sense because the history of Demacia is a nation that was founded in order to protect people from the ravages of magic. Like from the aftermath of the Rune Wars, that's when Demacia rose. They did not want anything to do with magic anymore. We want to be left alone. We want to protect ourselves. We want to be safe. And so, what you get from the borders is this small, squarish, self-contained little thing with absolutely no no territorial ambitions whatsoever. And there's also another curious feature to this continent. Notice the huge neutral area. Nobody controls this area in the middle of the map. Not Noxus, not the Freljord, not Demacia. Noxus doesn't even seem to be expanding very aggressively into it. And that's interesting. What's going on here? Like, what's the deal with this region right here? There's really nothing a lot on the map. We've got the Gates of Mourning and a little bit of, like, concept art of them expanding into the territory, but mostly nothing is here. So why is that? Why is Noxus not trying to take over more aggressively? Why is Demacia leaving all of this territory untouched? Why does the Freljord not have anything to do with it? What's in here that's stopping them from doing that? I have a theory, because right here in Trevally, that's where Klett lives. And this might just be his property. Nobody wants to deal with that. I don't know. Maybe. It's a possibility. But that's kind of what I mean when I say that a map can be really useful for creating stories about the world, because you have this giant unconquered region between the three nations. It seems like there's a lot of stories to be told there, because it might just be that this is where Demacia and Noxus fight, right? That nobody has conquered it, because every time these two nations go to war over, like, Noxus trying to expand too much, it happens here. And every time Noxus is beaten back, they have to retreat from this area. And Demacia, not being expansionist, aren't really interested in consolidating the region. And so nobody takes it over. Nobody really pushes into it. Is that what's going on there? I don't know, but it's a possibility, and it's an interesting one. Speaking of interesting possibilities, Bandle City moves. Every time you refresh the map, Bandle City is in a different location. Like, now I have no freaking idea where it is, so we can't really talk about it too much. But you can see it's not here anymore. It has transported itself somewhere else in the world. And it seemed to be completely random. Like, I refreshed the map a bunch of times and found, there it is, now it's in Shurima. And found it, and it just seems to be kind of random where it crops up. It doesn't seem to have any fixed locations at all, which is really interesting. As far as I'm concerned, because Bandle City was always kind of a problem for League of Legends. Now, in recent times, the Yordles have always been kind of a black hole of lore in League of Legends. They have never really been properly explained as creatures until relatively recently, where Riot started to hint at the idea that the Yordles are essentially elves. Like, they're essentially fairies. They're essentially little nature spirits that are tied to Runeterra itself, but not tied to any particular one location. And so, what the hell do you do with Bandle City, which used to be the city of the Yordles? Well, you make Bandle City not tied to any physical location in Valoran at all. It just pops up wherever the heck it wants, and it has all these portals that are scattered all across the continent, all these weird magical portals that the Yordles can use to access Bandle City if they want to, but which mortals might have some trouble finding, or if they find it, have some trouble getting out again. And as an execution of the concept, that's really cool. And this is the kind of thing you can only really do with an interactive map like this, like to have a city that just kind of jumps around. An interactive map is about the only way to do that, but just having a map at all is the only way to really show that, oh, this place can have multiple locations. And that world building is really hard to do without some kind of physical idea of what the map of the world is supposed to be like. And I really just, I enjoy, like, this is obviously not to scale, but I really do enjoy finally having a more physical, a more real representation of what Runeterra is like, what it looks like. And one of the things that that I've heard so far is that this is not the final map, in the sense that, first of all, they're going to keep adding content to it, but also, like, there might be another continent out here. Like, maybe there's some islands out here that nobody has discovered yet. We can just kind of put them down and place them in the sea if we want to. Because, to be honest, 3 continents is a little bit small for an entire planet. So I don't see anything in the way of Riot just going, oh, look, we discovered not America over here. Lots of new champions there, lots of new stuff going on. Noxus is launching an invasion like tomorrow. All of a sudden you have this new play space to be working with. So I'm quite pleased that the map is not, entirely finalized. I clicked my tablet there by accident. And at least as far as I know, this was like a huge team effort with a lot of the various different teams at Riot contributing to kind of coding and figuring out how to make the map and figuring out where everything's placed. And so at least Riot is signaling right now that they are actually committed to this. Like, they're actually committed to doing something about the map, to doing something about exploring and expanding this world, which I'm very pleased with, because that's always, like, as I've been saying for years at this point, League of Legends needs more lore. Like, it needs to be more properly explored, because it really isn't yet explored properly at all. Oh, by the way, the Shadow Isles are down here, right? This is one of the other features of the map, and one of the things about zooming in and zooming out. When you zoom out, what you get is the Shadow Isles, because they're like full of undead and stuff. But when you zoom in and you see this, all of a sudden you get the history of the Blessed Isles, what the Shadow Isles used to be before the fall of the Ruined King, before everything went terribly, terribly wrong. This is what the Shadow Isles used to be when they were the Blessed Isles. Now, I have not seen this concept art before. I mean, I'm sure it was there on the Universe website, and I just couldn't find it, but I haven't seen this concept art before. And the only reason I discovered it at all was because I started exploring the map. And this is really, really freaking cool. Because the Shadow Isles are kind of an important place. Like, it's where Mordekaiser was interred. It's where all of the undead seem to be coming from. This place is important, it matters, and having a little visual of its history, of what it used to be once upon a time, it's just really, really cool. And I mean, looking at it, the Shadow Isles, or rather the Blessed Isles, as they once were, seem to kind of be a bit of a melting pot, like a little bit of a combination of all the various cultures of Runeterra, because you have these circle designs that are very reminiscent of like the sun disk designs that you find in Shuriman architecture, but also kind of reminiscent of the obsession with circles that you might get in Targon, which like also has a whole thing about lots and lots of circles everywhere in their design. But then also all these angles, all this very solid, very physical, very angular, very geometric design that's more typical of a place like Noxus, with a sense of decoration and lots of statues hanging around that is more the kind of thing that you would see in Demacia. Now, is this intentional? Like, were the Blessed Isles supposed to be a kind of melting pot of all the various cultures of Runeterra before the fall? I don't know, but like the concept art kind of makes it look like that might have been the intention once upon a time. Ooh, the harrowing. Spooky, scary skeletons and shivers down your spine. And yeah, I mean, I really like this as a way to organize all of the concept art. Now, I have to say, occasionally the concept art is still a little organized confusingly, because here, for instance, we have these serpent callers, which are these giant horns that help Bilgewater just kind of, when you blow the horns, it disorients the sea monsters so that they can't find Bilgewater and attack it. And then there's this girl, this harpoon mistress, who is very cool, but I'm not sure how she relates to these things, because her harpoon mistresses and stuff are people who sail out on the ships and do the fishing. Like, they sail out and catch the big monsters and bring them back and slaughter them on the slaughter docks and stuff. So how is she connected to the serpent horns? And it gets a little bit worse, because if we go over here to the Serpent Isles, here we have the exact same piece of concept art again, alongside some people who seem to be the people who actually operate these horns, who are actually responsible for them, and no hint of the harpooners. But if you click on, I think it's the, yeah, you click here on the western area of the Bilgewater place, the wharf rats are there. They're just kind of there. Because of some reasons, but these are wharf rats, like they live in the city of Bilgewater, so why is their concept art located like all the way frickin' out here? That's odd. And here on the slaughter docks, by the way, you can see this is where the harpooner seems to belong, like, because this is what they do. This is their thing. So why is the harpoon lady up there just kind of randomly there rather than being organized into, you know, Bilgewater itself? Like, because I remember, let's see. Yeah, here's the harpooner. There's a male harpooner. He's here alongside, like, the culture and the people and the professions of Bilgewater. He's there. So why is that lady all the way out here? So the map is not what I would call completely organized. And I've also, like, in my time messing around with it, I've also located, like, some spelling errors and some grammatical errors and some stuff that just kind of seemed to not fit where it was supposed to go. Which, you know, that kind of sucks. And that's something I hope they kind of reorganize in the future, like they kind of fix all of that up a little bit so that it makes more sense. Because, like, here's in Ionia, this is one of the environments of Ionia. You have these random swirling rocks that just kind of hang out, but that's just kind of the only thing that's on this whole island. The Temple of the Jagged Knife is not explained. What's going on Shun is not really explained, but we do have one place on the island where there's some rocks that float. Cool. And then up here we have flora, which is like flowers and trees and stuff, which are really, really cool, but over here we have the animals. And I don't... why these things are not organized more coherently, I'm not really sure. It seems like a weird way to separate them up. And it also seems weird to have the Kinku Monastery here, but have absolutely no concept art for it. Like, it's the home of 4 champions. Come from the Kinku. So why is there not even, like, one piece of concept art to show us what the Kinku Monastery looks like? Or the Hirana Monastery, which is where Udyr and Lee Sin tend to hang out. That's the other thing, is, like, some parts of the map that really should have something in them are just these kind of points on the map that are otherwise empty. Like, there's nothing in there. There's no reason to click on it. It's just a location with no content. And that, of course, again, is the problem with... because League of Legends hasn't had a map before, there really hasn't been any incentive to fill up the various places on the map with stuff to show us what those places are like. Which is something that I hope the map will eventually help to fix and sort of help to organize things a little bit. Oh, right. I also want to talk about Piltover and Son, because the whole point of Piltover and Son is that they sit on this little peninsula, which is otherwise separating the eastern seas of Valoran from the western seas of Valoran. Like, if you want to go from Demacia to Bilgewater, if you either have to go around the Freljord all the way up here past Noxus, which is bad if you're a Demacian ship. Noxus is probably not the place you want to pass by, past Ionia, and then you can get to Bilgewater. Or you have to sail south around Targon and then pass really, really close to Icathia, which is where, like, all of the Void is just there. All of the Void portals, all of the Void monsters are here. And then you have to sail relatively close past the Shadow Isles, which kind of, if you want to trade with Bilgewater, or even with Ionia, those routes kind of suck. So what was the solution? Well, Piltover and Son got together and decided to create a canal through this peninsula that ships can pass through. And this, again, is where having a physicality, a physical map, can help explain so much about why things are the way they are. Why is Piltover so filthy fucking rich? And why has it not been taken over by Noxus yet? Well, because Piltover is the gateway to trade between the western and eastern areas of Valoran. It's Ionia would never permit Noxus to take over Piltover because it would cut them off from Demacia and even from Shurima, the new risen empire that they might want to communicate with. It would cut them off from Targon. They would never allow it. Noxus would never allow Demacia and Ionia to dominate Piltover and Son because they need it too. And the same thing with Demacia. Demacia will not allow Noxus to dominate Piltover and Son because they need this area to be neutral so that they can trade with Bilgewater. And Bilgewater itself himself would probably also be kind of unhappy if all of a sudden Noxus or any one nation controlled this thoroughfare for all of their sailors to come through to the other side of the world. And so this geographical feature, this funneling, this special location in the world helps explain why a relatively minor pair of city-states can hold out against the expansionist aggression of the Noxian Empire. It's because nobody wants anyone to have singular control over this area. It is simply too valuable. There's too much trade that goes through there. There's too many ships. There's too much important communication and transport that goes through Piltover and so on. And so they have to be forced to remain neutral. And that's something that you can explain just by having a physical map. Like, I told you all of this out loud, but just by looking at the map, it's explained for me. You can see it in the geographical layout of the world that this is how it must be. And Noxus probably wants to take over Piltover and so on. Demacia would probably not mind if Piltover and so on allied themselves directly with them or with Ionia. But because of the conflicts of interest between the various nations of the world, it's never going to happen. And that's just a really good way to show that. Anyway, yeah, I thoroughly recommend that you go and you just explore the map for yourself, because there's a ton of really good and interesting stuff in there. For example, Sirima here, this is the home of Kassadin. This is where he's from. He came from Sirima. That was where he was born, presumably. But if we zoom out and we click on Shurima, do you know who we won't find in the list of associated champions? Kassadin. Kassadin is not associated with Shurima. Kassadin is associated with the Void. And unlike his daughter Kaisa, who's still associated with Shurima as well, Kassadin has no association with Shurima. He's associated with this little one town inside of the Empire, but not with Shurima itself. And that is a little bit of environmental storytelling, I think, where, yeah, Kassadin is from Shurima, but he doesn't go there anymore. He doesn't spend time in Shurima anymore. Kassadin is the Void Walker, and he spends all of his time nowadays in the Void. A little bit of environmental storytelling there, whereas Kaisa, who has still retained, somewhat more of a connection to the world outside of the Void, she is associated with Shurima. She is associated with this place, unlike her father. That's interesting. That's a cool little bit of environmental storytelling going on there. That's something that, again, you can do with a map, but you can't really do that storytelling without a map like this. Anyway, there was one other thing I wanted to take a look at, but I can't remember what it was. Right, the Freljord. The map, the trouble with making a map like this from Riot's perspective is that it kind of puts into stark relief the stuff that they haven't gotten quite right yet. And one of the things they haven't gotten quite right yet is the Freljord. Because unlike Noxus and Demacia and Ionia and Shurima, all of these places which have these very, very developed, very distinct aesthetics to them, Freljord doesn't. Freljord is, from a visual perspective, kind of a mess. And that can be kind of hard to tell from just looking at the Universe website. Like, looking at the Universe website, it just looks kind of like generic North Country Viking Raider Barbarian land. But looking at it here, in the context of all of this, what I'm seeing is a complete lack of clear distinction between the Frostguard, the Avarosan, and the Winter's Claw, Sejuani's tribe. Like, these three tribes could not be more different. Like, they could not be more different in culture. They could not be more different in approach to the world. The Avarosans are like unifiers. They're a political nation that wants to unify the entire Freljord in a collaboration of peace and harmony. The Frostguard are servants of the Void, and they want to corrupt everything and everyone and take over the entire world, whereas the Winter's Claw are a fiercely independent barbarian set of tribes that don't really want to unite, that don't really want to become a unified polity. They want to raid, and they want to kill, and they want to fight, because that's what their culture is like. But looking over the concept art of the various bits of the Freljord, I don't really get that sense. Like, this maybe this is the house of one of the Winter's Claw people, maybe, and this might be one of the Avarosans. Except that doesn't say so anywhere. It doesn't really say why Avarosan, like, why the Freljord houses look like this, whereas the old architecture of the Freljord looks like that. There really isn't a clear distinction between the peoples and the creatures of Freljord. It's just something I noticed when I was browsing around, that the more I looked at Freljord concept art, the less of an idea I had about what the Freljord is really supposed to look like. Because it seemed to be kind of this disjointed mess of tropes that didn't really add up to anything that made a proper amount of sense. Like, sometimes we have this 110% hyper Viking aesthetic going on, right? And then sometimes we have stuff like the Howling Abyss or the Frostguard Citadel, where everything is just these big stone columns that are made out of thing. But the trouble is, like, that would be a good way to distinguish between, like, the Viking tribes of the coast versus, you know, versus the Frostguard, except if we go here to the heart of the Avarosans, like, this is the heart of Avarosan culture. This is the heart of their empire. And we see exactly the same style of architecture as we see with the Frostguard. To me, it's a bit of a mess. It's not really properly put together. And it's just something I noticed that I kind of wanted to talk about. It might maybe a little bit messy to talk about it here, but the problem with the map is that it highlights all of the areas in which Riot are not quite up to scratch yet. It highlights all of the places that they haven't quite fully explored, all of the aesthetics that they haven't fully established, all of the concept art that really should be there but is kind of missing. All the empty spaces become obvious once you finally draw a map around them. Anyway, I think that's about it. If you've enjoyed this video, there's a like button down below. I invite you to click on it with this reckless abandon. Just punch that thing in the face. It enjoys it. It wants you to. You can also subscribe to the channel, which is helpful, useful, very good. And if you wouldn't mind parting with $1 a month to help me keep making videos like this, well, then I do have a Patreon where that is an option. There's a bunch of rewards over there, like access to the channel Discord and a special role, and you can get commissions from me, like art commissions and stuff, or I can help you with feedback for if you were writing a novel or if you have designing a character, I can help you with feedback for that as well. That's all stuff that you can get over on the Patreon. But if you're not able to do that, or if you're not willing to do that, that's completely okay. I'm just happy that you've watched the video so far. Finally, there is a dislike button down below, which, if you don't like the video, then I mean, I guess it's there. But unfortunately, the dislike button is only the first puzzle piece in, like, a larger collection of puzzles that you're gonna have to solve. Like, because it contains one piece of a map, and that map will lead you to the dwelling of an old hermit. The old hermit will tell you a riddle, and once you have solved that riddle, you must go to a particular location and dig in a particular spot. In that particular spot, you will find a box. Inside this box is a map. Once you follow that map, you will find an ancient tomb. Inside of that ancient tomb, you will find deadly creatures and deadly traps, all of them trying to stop you on your path. But finally, once you reach the end, you will come to the Hall of the Artifacts, and in there you will find the true dislike button. And if you really didn't like this video, you can go there and you can click on it. But all I'm saying is, watch out for the snakes. Thank you very much for watching.